Hey everybody, welcome to Big Brain Party. Today we're getting nerdy and we're talking about why I switched from 20 years on SPDs to Cane Creek Mallet-E's as my new favorite clipless pedal. That's kind of like a Ford guy converting to Chevy or a Jeep guy converting to Toyota. Today's video is sponsored by nobody. This is not a sponsored video. These are just my opinions about what I like and why. Your results will be totally different. You might like something totally different, so I'm not here to convince you to swap to Crank Brothers or ditch your SPDs. I like both, but today we're going to dive into the whys I like each one. For over 25 years, I've been using Shimano SPD clipless pedals. I've loved them. I've had zero complaints about them. They've been very robust. They've lasted thousands of miles. They are great pedals. A year and a half ago, Crank Brothers sent me some pedals and said, hey, we think you should try these out to see if you like them. I'll be honest, it took me about 5 months of these sitting in my shop drawer to get the courage to try them. I don't know why I was scared of them. I think I was afraid I wouldn't be able to clip out. I was afraid that everything I learned on here wouldn't transfer over. And I was super satisfied with SPDs. So why rock the boat when these are performing so well? Well, I'm so glad I did. And like all things, whenever we try new things, we learn something. And today I'm going to share what I've learned with you and why I've switched to Crank Brothers pedals. Now, in order to describe what's going on with the Crank Brothers clipless pedals, we need to talk about flat pedals a little bit. I ride flat pedals a lot. I still love flat pedals. They're one of my favorite feelings. And we've all tried them with something like a trail runner or a cross trainer. And the grip's okay, but it's not great. And you can reposition your foot easily and you can change it, but sometimes you find your feet slipping more than you want. So a lot of us upgrade to sticky rubber for our shoes, and then they sink into the pins and there's zero float, zero. And I love the zero float feel of flat pedals. Now remember, pedals are a control point, part where your body connects to the bike. And that means you control the bike through that point. A lot of us don't think about that. We just kind of think about pedaling to go or clipping in to stay connected to our bike. But as you start gaining more skills and going to more clinics, you'll realize pedals are a way to influence what the bike is doing and control it. So for me, I don't like float in my flat pedals. I like my shoes locked on because when I go to make a corner or lift up the rear or move the bike, I want it to move with me and I don't want any play. I want it to immediately react to my smallest input with my feet. I preferred the feel of flat pedals with that zero float. And so I'm always trying to get my clipless pedals to feel more like flat pedals where they're just glued to my feet and I can put that little body English into the bottom bracket and the pedals and the rear end through my feet with the pedals. Now, some people like float in their pedals. There's even some flat pedal manufacturers putting elastomers in there to give the flat pedal float. So you still have good grip, but you can get some side-to-side movement in it before it moves the bike. I don't like that, but some people do. So just because I like this doesn't mean you need to like it. You might have totally different experiences than me in your preferences, but it's important to talk about and think about this with our pedals. In the late 90s, when I started getting into clipless pedals on my mountain bikes, Shimano SPDs came around and they were super popular. There were 3 or 4 big players, and for some reason I just went with the Shimanos. I was familiar with them and they were everywhere and they were like 25 bucks a pedal. And SPDs gave me the performance I wanted out of clipless pedals. One cool thing about SPDs is you can adjust the tension with which they release. There's a little indicator here that you can tighten or loosen to make it easier to clip out or harder to clip out. Now SPD pedals have float built into them. You can see how much the shoe can move without unclipping. So those that like float while they ride and like to kind of change their position without clipping out or without it influencing the bike, you're going to love this. But I found I was missing that connected, planted feeling that I get with flat pedals. And even though my feet were attached to the cranks, I didn't feel like I had quite that confidence on downhills into corners and things. And I never realized how much that float affected me. And I just thought, oh, that's a clipless thing. I'm just going to have less confidence with clipless pedals and more confidence with flats. But after trying the Crank Brothers, I realized just how much this float was messing with my confidence. Another thing I don't love about SPDs, at least with these ones, is the side to side and kind of up and down play. I don't quite feel connected to my bike. That float gives me this kind of vague feeling where I'm kind of disconnected. Now, in the 90s, when we were all worried about cross country and watts and being able to pull up on the upstroke, that was no big problem. We weren't shredding super hard there, and downhill racers weren't clipping in. And so we didn't really think about what we were losing on clips with that float. And the float probably helped a few people with their knees or hip problems or bad body posture. It kind of let them move around a little and still have that float and that give in there so they could still kind of tweak it to their needs, but still be connected. And for 25 years, I rode those thinking that's what all clipless pedals felt like. So SPDs are great. No, I'm not knocking on them. They have a bit of play in them. They have that side-to-side float. They're super durable. They're the most widely used clipless pedals. So if you go to an event and you have your clipless shoes, there's a good chance you can find some SPDs there. They're easy to adjust the tension to make them easy or hard to clip out of. And they're great pedals. But I didn't realize how much that float disturbed me till I tried the Crank Brothers. Now, Crank Brothers has a completely different mechanism. This is the egg beater pedal. This is what they were famous for back in the weight weenie days when we cared all about weight and mud shedding. I remember a lot of people saying, I love the Crank Brothers for when it's muddy. They clear out better than SPDs, and you can see why. There's a lot more space in here. So this is a totally different design. Rather than adjusting the pedal, they have different cleats for you to put on your shoe to make it do different things. They have easy release cleats and they have standard release cleats. They have high float cleats and they have low float cleats. So you adjust all of that through your cleat. Now, I imagine most people haven't experimented with the different cleats. We have, and we're going to do that in another video coming up. I'm excited to show you that. But most people will probably set them on their shoes and then just go ride what they've got and never tinker around because there's a cost involved and it's a bit of a pain to set your cleats up perfect every time. And because we're just lazy and we want to just go ride. And to be honest, I don't love egg beaters. These did not sell me on Crank Brothers. They're not bad. I just get more of a vague feeling than I do with SPDs. But I feel like I'm standing on a spindle more than I'm standing on a pedal or a platform. And with SPDs, even those tiny little ones with no cage, I always felt like I was standing on a big platform. I didn't feel like I needed a huge platform. But with Crank Brothers, I definitely feel like I need this platform around here. So Crank Brothers has a variety of pedals. There's 4 or 5 different models that start with the egg beaters. Then they have a little tiny cage around them. Then the cage gets bigger and then the cage gets more pins. And this is the Enduro one, the Mallet-E that I like. And then they have a DH one, which is even bigger, a little bit heavier, and even more pins. So when I set up my Crank Brothers shoes, I didn't quite do it the way they recommend it. I did it the way it made sense to me. Now, just like SPDs, there's a cleat on your shoe, and that's what clicks into the mechanism. But one big difference with Crank Brothers is these cleats wear down a lot faster. They're made out of brass, and so a lot of people will love their Crank Brothers for a while, and then they think, oh, the pedals stopped working, when what actually happened is their brass cleat, because it's brass, wore down and it's time to replace the cleat. We're going to have another video on cleat position and talk more about that. But another thing I like about Crank Brothers pedals is how low you can mount the cleats. My coach that I listen to the most, Simon Lawton from Fluid Ride, I really respect his analysis and his coaching and the way he recommends we ride. He recommends we ride with the ball of our foot ahead of the pedal spindle. Most people do it backwards. They put the cleat all the way up here and they're riding more on their toes because in the XC world and the road world, you get more power out of it with your toes. But I'm more interested in control. And so what Simon recommends is you put the spindle of the pedal behind the ball of your foot so it's closer to the center of your foot. I ride my flat pedals that way. I ride my dirt jumpers that way, my pump track bikes. Every bike I ride that way. And so when I mount my cleats, I mount them all the way to the bottom. So it's a little bit more centered in the center of the foot. That allows me to dip my toes. Yes, I dip my toes when riding. A lot of people say just drop your heels and hang on. There are so many times when it's advantageous to drop your toes. Another topic for another day. But when I mount it in the back, I feel like my foot is more in the same position than when I'm on my flat pedals. These came installed with a little plastic shim spacer that kind of shims the cleat out a little bit more so that the pins don't just sink into the shoe too much. I want the pins to sink in, so I pulled out that plastic spacer and I just bolted these straight down and I raised the pins on this pedal. So now when I clip in, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this with my hand. Okay, now we're in. Now there's zero float, zero. And it unclips even easier than an SPD. And these aren't even the easy release cleats. So if anything, they were easier to clip out of. I remember the first time I set my cleats up that way and I went to go clip in and I couldn't clip in. And then I stepped real hard and it clicked in. And what happened was the pins were holding the shoe up above the cleat just a little. And when I stepped hard, it put this tension between the shoe and the pedal and it really sucked on there. And I had no more of that vertical slop that I have with my SPDs or the side-to-side rocking or even float. There's zero float. Now you might be able to get that with the Shimano pedal too. You might be able to get one of those with cages where the pins sink in enough, and I haven't experimented with that. But I really like this feel. The way I've set my pins up is they're digging into the sole of my shoe. So it feels like the stickiest rubber on a platform pedal plus the benefit of a clip, and I can pull up. And when I want to get out, I just twist and it comes right out. So that completely sold me. Personally, I run the Mallet-E's. They've got just the right amount of pins and I can adjust the height to get them to sink down into my shoe, get that planted flat pedal feel, but still have the benefit of being clipped in. And honestly, I have crashed 0 times since switching to these because of the clips. I've been able to unclip every single time. And I remember my first ride on these, I was like, man, I don't know. Is it gonna feel totally different? What am I doing? I'm throwing away 25 years of tried and true, reliable clipless pedals. And it was super intuitive, super second nature. I just had to step down a little more because of how I set them up. And I want that tension when I clip in, that the cleat, the sole is pushing up and the pins are pushing the pedal against it. And it's just super tight, no slop, and I just feel connected to my bike. So I get that feel again where I can twist and pivot the bike. And on corners, I can open up my knees and my hips and really get the bike to twist through my feet. So instead of using clipless pedals to just hang on and be attached to the bike, it's now a control point. Could there be a Shimano setup that does that for me? Sure, I just need to experiment more, but I wanted to share that. How about you? Are you a high float fan or a low float fan? Some people get 510 sticky rubber on flat pedals and say, this was too sticky. I couldn't reposition my foot, and I even had a hard time taking my foot off when I needed to. Is that you? Or are you of the mindset like me where it's like the stickier the better and the more locked into those pins, the better, because I can kind of throw the bike around with that? What do you guys think? What clipless pedals have you tried? Which ones are your favorite and why? Thanks for getting nerdy with me today and bringing your brain to the party. I'm Steve from Big Brain Party. If you want to support this channel and you like learning and want to help me make more of these videos more often, consider becoming a patron. I've also got some links down below to discounts to wonderful products, all the products that I use. And I also have a little donation link if you want to kick a few bucks my way to say thanks for this video. Thanks for watching. You guys are awesome.